Hey everyone, welcome to the Path to Purpose podcast. My name is Kieran Williams, and today I'm going to be talking to you about trusting the process. And I'm sure a lot of you may have had this when you have doubts about your goals, or maybe you start to feel uncertain about the future, or maybe even your life doesn't look like it's going in the direction you wanted or hoped. So if that sounds like you, then hopefully my story will resonate with you. First of all, going back to the beginning of 2022, I didn't even consider the idea of traveling full time. My life was completely different at that point. I was doing different things. I was working in a full-time job. I was in a relationship. There was lots going on. So basically, I didn't see that I would ever go traveling anytime soon. And actually, the idea of traveling didn't really happen until around June or July that year. So it was in June or July that year that I just decided, yep, I'm going to just pack up, sell everything, go traveling. And yeah, within a couple of months I went away. I'd went to go and get all my vaccinations for all the things you have to protect yourself against when you're traveling in Asia, from mosquito bites. You have to get malaria. You have to get malaria tablets. You have to get vaccines against Japanese encephalitis and cholera, and there's all sorts of things you have to do. And on top of that, you've got the visas. So there was a lot of planning involved within them 2 months before I went away in September of 2022. I left the house on I think it was 29th of September that I left my house, and I just went to Milan. That was my first stop, and left with no return ticket home. Just a one-way ticket around the world. So this is kind of proof of how quickly things can change, because at the beginning of the year, I didn't anticipate that I would be going anywhere at all. I didn't even think about the idea of traveling. So just to think that within half a year, I completely changed my life, turned it upside down, and I was doing something completely different. And going off of this, I'd actually only planned up until I got to Bali. So my plan was that I was going to be traveling in September, and by the end of October I would be in Bali, and that would be my first stop in Asia. And from that point I had no idea what the rest of the journey was going to look like. It was just very much like up in the air. There was no plan, but that was the exciting part about it, was the fact that I didn't know what was going to happen. It was actually, for me, exciting. For some people it can be quite stressful, but I feel like there was a time where I was definitely feeling a little bit stressed about it, because of course, when you're going into the unknown for the first time, it's hard to know what to expect. But this is where it brings me to the point about trusting the process, and just trust that because you have your heart set on something, like my heart was set on traveling, you just have to trust that things will work out in the best way, as long as you maintain that focus on what you really want from traveling, what you really want from doing whatever it is that you're focusing on. And I'm using traveling, of course, as my example, because this for me was where I learned about trusting the process. So skipping ahead from Bali, I actually managed to travel through 7 more countries in Asia before I eventually headed home. I genuinely had the best time of my life, because I don't look back now and think to myself that I regret doing any of them experiences and having no money at the end of it. I've actually come away from that trip with more ideas of how to earn money, with new life lessons, and I know for sure that I want to go back out there and see the world again. So it's actually adjusted my focus even more and allowed me to see that what I really want is to be out there traveling, is to be out there seeing the world, experiencing things, and making what I want to do work. The first step of that was just trusting the process, and just trusting that I would be fine. I'm still home, I still have my health, and that is the most important thing. The process has still led me to safety. And although you could look at having no money now as a downfall, which I most certainly did when I was on the flight home from Nepal. I was in Kathmandu, that was my last stop in Asia. And on the way home, I was definitely thinking to myself, well, what am I going to do? I have no money. I'm going to have to go back into a full-time job and just save up again, or whatever it is. And, my mindset was not great at that point, because I felt at that time like I had failed. So although I trusted the process, I felt like I had failed. But what I had to remind myself later on when I got home was that I still had to trust the process, because even though I was home, it didn't mean that I hadn't trusted, or it didn't mean that the journey was over. It just meant that I had to come home and trust that there would be another way to go back out and do it again. So I guess it's all about perspective as well, and that's a huge thing that I learned. is that no matter what happens through your journey, as long as you trust that you're being guided and you're guiding yourself in a way where you're not going to give up, basically, you don't give up on that goal, no matter what setbacks there are, as long as you believe that, then you're going to be fine. Because when you think too much into the future and wonder how things are going to work out and you're worrying about all the possible outcomes, then essentially you're just torturing yourself. And because of that, you're thinking about situations that haven't actually materialized yet. They're things that have not happened and most likely will not happen in the exact way that you're thinking they will. It's just we as humans think of the worst case scenario and we worry that something terribly bad is going to happen to us. And a lot of the time it doesn't actually happen that way. And we completely forget that we even thought them thoughts at the time. So it's just reminding yourself like the pattern that you get into. And that for me was a huge thing. Like I did that so often in my own head. I was trying to think about how the future might look and I was so uncertain about it. A lot of the time, the things I was thinking never came true. While I was in Bali, I didn't think I would be able to continue from Bali. I didn't see any other way, but somehow, one way or another, I managed to continue traveling for a little while longer, earning some money on the way. I did have to borrow some money as well, but regardless, I was still able to find a way through and keep focusing on my ultimate goal at the time, which was to find regular income and was to build my YouTube channel and to develop my photography. I still maintain my focus on my goals, and that allowed me to keep traveling. So I think that's just a really important reminder, is that no matter how hard it gets, if you can still maintain a focus on the reason you're doing the thing that you set out to do, then you'll be fine. You just have to trust that. So just trust the process. Some of you might not agree with that. Some of you will, but this is just from my experience. And I feel like this is something that really helped me to get through them times that felt challenging. So I'm not saying that everything we think about negatively isn't going to come true. My point is that a lot of the time we make it 10 times worse in our head. So something negative that's perceived negative could happen, but a lot of the time the way we think of it, we think it's going to be so bad and we think it's going to be like the worst thing ever, and we work ourselves up all this worry. But when in reality it does happen, it's not as bad as anticipated. My main point from this podcast today is that when you start trusting yourself and your journey and just be present where you are, you can start to accept the things that you can control. And one of the things that you can control is your mindset towards your desired outcome. All the time that you're focused on the negative outcome, and of course a lot of us do this without thinking, it's like a default setting in our minds that we just think the worst about things. But it's only when you sit there and realize that what you're thinking is not healthy, that's when you can start taking action towards changing your mindset. So that's how you change it. You have to become aware of your thought patterns and become aware of how you're thinking, and talk to yourself the same way that you would talk to someone else that might be going through a difficult time, that might be uncertain about the future. You would reassure them. You would tell them that everything's going to be okay, and you have to do the same thing to yourself. That's how you get through things. And by doing this, you're increasing your positive energy, you're raising your vibrations, and you're also showing yourself respect and giving kindness towards the goals that you want to achieve. I think as well, one thing that I reminded myself of in Bali, and something I've been reminding myself of a lot since I've been back home, is that you have to remember the things you want to achieve are attainable. They are all attainable, because there's most likely other people out there in the world doing the exact same thing that you want to do, and they are living proof that your goals can be achieved. If someone else can do it, then you can as well. And even though it's cliche, it's the saying that nothing is impossible. And especially nothing is impossible if it's already proven by someone else to be possible. So obviously, if you've never trusted yourself, it's going to be difficult to immediately start trusting yourself. One of the ways that I've been doing this is constantly keep taking actions on the things that I actually want to do and believe that I can do them. Because the only way that you can actually believe that you can do something is if you start taking action towards the thing you want to achieve. But I just want to remind you guys that I am still very much early on this journey, and I still have a lot of days where I don't believe in myself, but I'm starting to get better at that. I guess you could say it's like reprogramming your brain to think more positive thoughts. And I guess it's similar to having habits. Like once you make a habit of doing something, it becomes part of your routine. So If you're constantly giving yourself positive affirmations all the time, then naturally you're going to have a more positive outlook on different situations. I would recommend people definitely to try this because this is what worked for me, and this is why I wanted to share this with you guys today in the hope that it helps you too. But with that being said, I just wanted to thank everyone for listening to today's episode, and I hope there's at least one thing you could take from this episode to help you on your journey, or should I say path to purpose. But thanks for listening, and I'll catch you all in the next episode.